Hello, good evening, and welcome to the third episode of this new era of the eFootball podcast. My name's Dan Tracy, and once again, I am joined by not Everton and Republic of Ireland international midfielder James McCarthy. James, how are you?
I'm good, mate, thank you. How are you?
Glad to be back again, and the budget has been increased this week. We've managed to get another guest. It's Anthony Kendrick, a man I know well from Football Podcast. He's a good guest, and he'll give as good as he gets. So, Anthony, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Delighted to be here.
Thanks for being on the show, mate. You're very much welcome. The question I've started the first 2 weeks, I'll ask again, a good grounding point, but have you two watched any football in the past 7 days?
I wouldn't be here if I hadn't watched any football.
Brilliant, that's what I like to hear. That's the where better to start this week's show than Zlatan, or Zlatban, as I'm going to call him tonight, after little boo.
That's poor.
That is poor. I don't know why I'm laughing about a joke. I'm sorry, guys.
It's the only laugh you can get, mate, so laugh it up.
So, listeners and guests, I can only apologise for that one. Yeah, so we'll start with the ban itself. Did he have not really a case to argue the fact that he sort of admitted the charge? James, we'll start with you first.
No, I think, the fact that he's come out and admitted guilt, I mean, it's commendable to start with, because, it would be very easy for him to say, oh, I didn't mean to. You get footballers these days who they're not quick to hold their hands up, but in this situation he was very quick to hold his hands up, that's kind of commendable. And then he has to expect it. You can see from his reaction. I think he knows that everyone can see from his reaction that he got a bit of a knock on the head, and he was out to get Tyrone Mings from the start. And if you go in the way that he did with that elbow, and he really did try and take his head off, I think he can't expect anything less than a 3-game ban. And I think it's the right decision. 3 games is the same as a straight red card, which is what the challenge deserved in the first place. And I'm glad that this kind of, finally, they've got a retrospective decision kind of right, really.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony, like I say, not really a case to answer. Is that a case of him just literally saying, Mings, have some of that? Can you condone it, really?
I think, he said straight after the game, didn't he, that Mings jumped into his elbow, which, no, I don't believe that. I think, not a case to answer. I think he was going out for revenge after being stamped on. I think right decision as well to ban him. I think the comparison I would make is Aguero earlier in the season. He got that retrospective ban, and that was questionable. I think if the argument would be, if you didn't ban him for that, but Aguero got banned earlier in the season, we'd be saying, what are the FA doing? So yeah, right decision, and yeah, he was going out for revenge, to answer your question, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the point you make about Aguero, that's what I raised to my friends. I said, if you look at that perfect example of Aguero smashing Winston Reid around the face, whether the referee did actually see it or not, that's still quite contentious, but that is as plain as day, and Zlatan's was as well. But that leads me into the reasoning behind doing that. Do you reckon Mings' stamp was intentional? Now, I've got some feedback from Twitter in a bit, but I'll take your views first. Anthony, if I start with you, did Mings mean that?
I think he did. I know I watched Match of the Day, and they defended him, saying they didn't think it was deliberate. But for me, I think it was deliberate myself. But there is a small doubt, but not big enough. I think on the balance of probabilities, he's got to be found guilty for me.
And you, James, do you think he warrants perhaps an even longer ban than Zlatan?
No, I'd say it'd be fair to give him the same ban. I think that'd kind of keep all the parties happy. You'll have the odd person who thinks that Mings tried his hardest to get out of the way of Ibrahimovic, but that's not the case. I don't think that he intentionally went to kick him in the head, but then again, I think he's got the decision to avoid him, and he's chosen to not avoid him. So it's one of those. He carried on. You could call it his natural path, but he could have avoided it, and he could have avoided injuring the player, and he chose not to. And so if that's the same thing as intentional, then it's intentional, I guess. But yeah, I think the safest course of action is just to give the same ban. Then that's both parties are happy. It's put to bed. It can move on. Hopefully, the two players can come to some kind of apology between the two of them, and so it's very easy to get lost in the heat at the moment. I know that. I was a right feisty little Sunday League player myself, but that's a very different story. But it's easy just to hopefully we can see them to shake hands, move on, and get on with the game. Two great players, one maybe better than the other, but hopefully we can just see them move on from this.
Well, you two have reckoned it is intentional. Now the feedback I've got is it's not intentional. So I'll read out some of the comments I've got. @PaulBannon5 says, definitely not. His eyes were not looking at his head at the time. At Stumpy Spurs says, I can understand Ibrahimovic fuming, but don't think Stamp was deliberate. At Rob Matley says, of course not. Impossible to hurdle a tall player at speed whilst looking in the other direction. While Reese Head says, still thinks it's deliberate. Peripheral vision allows you to do it under disguise. A clever move by Ming. So Twitter's got a split opinion. Will we ever really know the answer? I think it's one of those, really, isn't it? I think, like you said, James, that perhaps it would be better if the FA portion out the same punishment to both, because then you'll get, if not, the whole conspiracy theory of big teams getting away with decisions again. So that's sort of a rocky road they probably don't want to go down. So, Anthony, as a Man United fan, how much are you going to miss Zlatan in the next 3 domestic games? Obviously, you can play in Europa League, but the fact that it's 2 Premier League games with the race for fourth still wide open and an FA Cup quarter-final, is that going to be a big blow?
Of course it is. He scored, I don't know the number offhand, he scored a lot of goals for us this season. Yeah, of course. I think, though, with the Chelsea game, I'll be interested to see how we set up without Zlatan, because I'd love to see a front three of Martial, Mkhitaryan and Rashford and counter-attack them. I think that could be almost a blessing in disguise and make us play a different tactic. Whether Wayne Rooney gets a chance in the other games to shine at last. We're going to miss him, of course, but with Rooney and with them 3 forwards against Chelsea, I'm interested to see what happens, really.
I did actually get a listener's question, James, this time, so I'll fire it over to you.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. We're on the up and up. From a Man United fan, and he says, if Rashford doesn't play in these next few games, will he start sort of thinking to himself perhaps that he may need to move on in the summer? Because he's sort of at that age where development, at the point we're sort of playing week to week, and is United going to give him that football, or is he sort of better?
No, I mean, not at all. It's a discussion that I had on the Spurs podcast last night about Harry Winks, and it's like these youngsters, they, you can say that they're not getting the game time and they might be looking for a move away, but they have to remember that they are overachieving at the minute. They are punching above their weight, so to speak. So for Rashford to say that he's unhappy because he's not getting into the Manchester United first team when he's 19 years old and playing behind Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Wayne Rooney, I think is maybe a little bit big-headed of him. He can't be expected to be making that first team, no matter how good his breakthrough was. At 19 years old and as a relatively new Premier League player, he can't be expected to walk into that first team. And so anything that he's getting at the minute is a bonus. Like, as I say with Harry Winks, he is 19, 20 years old, and any minutes that he's getting under his belt at Spurs is a bonus, because he can't be expected to be making the first team week in, week out behind the likes of Wanyama and Dembele, and that's the same for Rashford. He can't be expecting to walk into that. Anyone that expects to walk into the Man United first team at 19 years old has clearly got a bit of an inflated persona, and so therefore he needs to, if he is going to think about packing his bags and moving off, then he needs to think very carefully, because United brought him through. He owes them a lot, and he really can't be expected to be walking into that first team. Anthony, as a Man United fan, I'm sure you might have a different opinion to that, but if we had someone who wanted to walk straight into it at 19, then I'd be sceptical,
Yeah, I think with Rashford, he shouldn't leave. No, he shouldn't. You've got to think as well in training and stuff. Just to add to what you've said, I pretty much agree. Learning off Zlatan and Wayne Rooney and training every day, that must really be something. And I think that's something that's probably underestimated, especially with Zlatan coming in this season. I think he should stay at the club, but I don't think. The one thing I would disagree with you, James, is that you say he owes the club a lot and that, but I think these days owing clubs means nothing. I think, if a better offer comes along, if, I don't know, obviously a hypothetical situation, but if, Chelsea come along and say we want to make you our number one striker, he's got to take it. He doesn't owe the club anything, in my view. Well, he does owe the club, but the way football is now, it doesn't matter.
Also, if you look at the way Man United's attacking personnel is, if Rashford is patient, could envisage a situation where Zlatan doesn't sign a new contract and goes in the summer, Rooney could leave, Martial's not really sort of kicked on from the time he joined, so he could really have a bigger role if he just sort of waits a few months, and it could all sort of fall nicely for him, really. So yeah,
I mean, he needs to hold off and think, he's going to be a player for the future. That's everyone said that. Everyone can see that he's going to be a player for the future, but he can't be expecting to walk into that first team, and especially not with Zlatan in the form that he is in. He's playing every game at the minute, Zlatan is, and it's the chances like this 3-game suspension that he needs to be taking just to prove that he's still there, he's still in contention, especially as you say when Zlatan eventually moves on, which isn't going to be more than 2 years. He needs to be ready to make that step up when it comes along.
If we touch on United's draw, which failed to see them move into the top 4, and that links us nicely into Liverpool-Arsenal, which was also a battle for the top 4. And Arsenal fans, where do you start, really? We haven't got any Arsenal fans here tonight, so we'll have to sort of just guess where they start. It won't be a good start, I guess. But James, did Liverpool take full advantage of Arsenal's somewhat lacklustre lineup?
Yeah, I mean, as happy as I was to see Arsenal being turned over in such a fashion, I think if I was an Arsenal fan, which I am very much not, I would be absolutely fuming with how they went to Anfield, how they set up at Anfield, and just how they performed at Anfield altogether. I mean, if Spurs went to Anfield and left Harry Kane on the bench, if Man United went to Anfield and left Zlatan Ibrahimovic on the bench, if Man City went and left Aguero on the bench, if Chelsea went and left Hazard on the bench, everyone would ask questions. Arsenal went to Liverpool and left their best player, one of the best players in the league, one of the best performing players in the league, their absolute goal machine on the bench, and went for a typically not Arsenal Route 1 approach. I very much rate Olivier Giroud. I think he's a very good striker. I think he's criminally underrated, and that's something that pains me to say as a Tottenham fan, but I think he is a really good player to have in their weaponry. But he is not in the same league as Alexis Sanchez as a player, and I would be absolutely fuming if I was an Arsenal fan and I saw us really sell out our beliefs. I really wouldn't expect it of Arsene Wenger. I mean, as much as I'm a Spurs fan, I do respect him for everything he's done at Arsenal. It's incredible for someone to be in a job for that long and build a legacy that he has, and for him to sell out the way he did at Anfield and just go for this Route 1 approach that really isn't. It's not something you associate with Arsenal. I'd be absolutely raging if I was an Arsenal fan, and by all means, I can imagine they are.
Anthony, from your point of view, the smokescreen perhaps of Sanchez having a bust up earlier in the week, is that something that's almost like a get out of jail free card for Wenger, or did Wenger just get it completely wrong on Saturday?
He did get it wrong. I think he had to adapt his tactics, and I think the idea of trying to play a long ball game against Liverpool is the right idea to do in principle, but yeah, it went completely wrong. I think the Sanchez thing is a big distraction from it, but yeah, it was the right idea, but I think it was executed poorly for me. But I think the bigger picture is Arsenal have lost 3 of their last 4 games, and they lost to Chelsea a couple of weeks ago, and Watford as well before that. Lost 3 of the last 4 games, and that's bad form to be in at this time of the season.
Do you reckon we're almost seeing a sort of split within those top 6, where you could almost draw a line, say from 1st to 3rd and then 4th to 6th? So you've got Chelsea, Tottenham, Man City in the top 3, and they might stay there for the rest of the season, and then Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United will perhaps be fighting over that last Champions League place. Is that a fair statement, or do you reckon there could still be movement from 5 teams below Chelsea?
I think Chelsea are going to walk the league. I don't think either of you would disagree with me on that. I think there's still a lot of things that could change. I think United they've drawn a few games, but they've been on this long unbeaten run. I think there'll still be movement behind Chelsea winning the league for me.
Okay, and same question to you, James?
Yeah, no, I have to agree. It's the most unpredictable league in the world, and you can't take that for granted. I can't see Man United going higher. They've done their best possible. They're unbeaten in 15 games. They've won a trophy, and yet they're still in 6th. I think they've spent something like 30 weeks in 6th position now, and so I can't see that moving at any point. However, but for me, it's Liverpool who are the most unpredictable team, because I said it a couple of weeks ago when they were due to play Tottenham. They can turn up and absolutely blow a team away with this attacking brand of football, this total football that's absolutely gorgeous, but then again, they can turn up like they did against Leicester and just look like a team who have never played together before. And so it's whether they can keep hold of that form, keep that form up, and keep on winning games. But really, I can't see that, because there's a real continuity issue at Liverpool. I'm very much hoping that Spurs can keep that 2nd place down. I think they should be able to, but as long as they can keep the starting 11 that they're using at the moment fit, because Dan, I'm sure you've seen it as much as I have. Our second string side is nowhere near as good as our first string, and so any injuries are definitely going to affect the side. And so if we can keep that starting 11 together, then second place should be ours. And Man City, I think they're definitely missing one or two players that Guardiola will want to address. And so, yeah, you're right that there might be a bit of a split going on with the 3 and the 3, but there's definitely movement to be had. Like, certainly, I have to agree with Anthony in that Chelsea are going to run away with the league, unfortunately, as unfortunate as it is to say, because I'd absolutely love to see us challenge for the Premier League. But no, I'd say that's away from us. But there's definitely movement to be had, and I hope there is, to be honest, because it's the most exciting league in the world, and it really is great to see teams fighting for things. And if it stays as it is, it won't be very competitive.
Yeah, because we've all come to the consensus that Chelsea will win the league, and that's no sort of surprise. But we almost need that sort of next 5 teams to duke it out to the end of the season, just to make it a bit more interesting. Otherwise, it'd be no fun if the top 4 had already written itself as well. Make a good point with Liverpool, the fact that they're almost like night and day. The fact they rolled over Tottenham and Arsenal at home, and then conversely the 2 last away games they've lost to Hull and Leicester. So you would think that their perhaps inconsistencies might be their Achilles heel come the end of the season. For all their sort of worth going forwards, they are still let down at times at the back. Arsenal, they've got a game in hand. United, too many draws have been their Achilles heel. Who's not going to be in that Champions League places come the end of the season? I wouldn't like to even predict it at the moment. I still think there's too much football to play. 11 games to go.
You probably like me saying this, but Spurs are my favourite team in the Premier League to watch. Spurs will finish second myself. I really like watching them play, and I hope they finish second, but we'll see.
Yeah, as a Spurs fan, I'd put the Tottenham hat on, as I do each episode. I'd be delighted with second, because not only that, it's progress from last season. Perhaps we should have finished second anyway, but you could even argue that this season is more competitive. So to finish second in this season would be even more of an achievement. Perhaps the Europa League and Champions League exits might define our season, but finishing runners-up wouldn't necessarily be the sort of the worst thing in the world to sort of cover over those cracks, I guess. Do you reckon that's a fair point, James?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think second would be like a trophy to us, because it's almost the best of the rest. It is the best of the rest, and Chelsea have been absolutely awesome this year. They've got the personnel that really does deserve to win the league. You can't look past Hazard and Kante for quality players, and so finishing second to that it's not a defeat really. They're a brilliant side, and they do deserve to win the Premier League. However, I really hope it's a competitive second. I really hope it's not a typical Celtic, Bayern Munich, Juventus win the league with 3 games to go, win the league by 12 points or so. I hope it's we push them to the last game, lose it by maybe 5 or 6 points. I'd be very happy with, but I really hope we push them as far as we can possibly go. I hope it's not like a last season where we have the opportunity to be successful and we turn down that opportunity through our own football. I hope that it is Chelsea being good rather than us being bad that wins the league, and hopefully the Tottenham lads have got the mentality to take it down to the last month at least.
I'll touch on Chelsea in a minute. We'll sort of focus a bit more on the Spurs game. A great win against an informed Everton side who had not lost in 9 beforehand. Is it fair to say, Anthony, that the scoreline was probably painting a different story to the actual game itself?
Yeah, no, I think 3. It could have been more for Spurs. I guess it should have been more, but I guess I'm kind of happy it was 3-2, because at least it was an entertaining game from a neutral point of view. I guess from your point of view, you're probably hoping it was something like 5-2 or 4-1, something like that.
It was a bit of a nervy ending, a bit of an unnecessary nervy ending. Do you not think, James?
Yes and no, really. It was I think something that I've never really felt before with Tottenham is when we were 2-1 down. 2-1 up. I don't think I've ever been that confident when Spurs have been 2-1 up. It must be something that we're born with as Tottenham fans, that even if you're 4-0 down going into the last minute, you still think you're going to lose 5-4. But at 2-1, I really did feel like we were going to see the game out, and I didn't think Everton had it in them to find an equaliser, and that is the most confident I've ever been with Spurs in a winning position. I have to say, I don't think we would have conceded that second Everton goal if we hadn't scored our third. It was we scored. There was a lot of celebration. Pochettino looked absolutely buzzing, and the sloppy set piece second Everton goal wouldn't have happened if we hadn't scored at the other end just before. So yeah, I don't think any stage Everton would have equalised. If it was 2-1 going into that last 30 seconds with the set piece on the halfway line, we would have been a lot more switched on and we would have dealt with it. But with the game out of Everton's reach, that's why we switched off. That's why we conceded that last goal, and that's why you say I think it was a bit of a flattering scoreline for Everton, and it was, I saw it described as a 4-0 game with a 3-2 scoreline, which is something that I think really summed the game up.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to sum up, actually. A lot was made of the battle of the number 10s beforehand with Kane and Lukaku, and I guess Kane won that personal duel 2-1. They asked the question on Super Sunday, I don't know if you would have heard it, but who right now out of those two is best number 10? Anthony, who do you reckon?
That's a very difficult... Am I allowed to say they're equal or not?
You can't. Well, if you want, I'm not going to answer it because we'll get accused of myself and James of Tottenham bias. So I'm going to.
To me, it's absolutely no-brainer. But
so that's why I'm not asking you, James. So
okay. I'll say that Harry Kane is probably playing better, but I think Everton is more. Lukaku is more critical to Everton. I think if Lukaku was out, Everton would be screwed. Everton would be a lot lower. I think Everton would lose more places without Lukaku than Tottenham would lose without Kane. I don't know if that sums it up well, what I think.
I think they're certainly both talismanic for their clubs. I think also Tottenham would probably sink down the table. Not as drastic perhaps, but I think they, without Kane for a longer spell, they'd easily be 6, because we're only talking 7 points between United and in 6th and Tottenham in 2nd. I think that's been the difference, really. Would you say, James?
Yeah, I mean, with Kane, you've got. We saw it against Everton in that first half. It's a goal out of nothing, and that's what we need at times, is a bit of a kick at the backside and a bit of a let's go, and that's what Kane provides. He provides a bit of impetus, a bit of get up and go, and I don't really see that in Lukaku. I don't see the same attitude in Lukaku as Kane, and I'm trying my very hardest to take my Tottenham cap off here. Romelu Lukaku is an incredible player, and I would absolutely adore to have him wearing a Spurs shirt because he is a brilliant player, but I just don't see the same qualities between him and Kane. I really don't think that they're the same type of player in any way, and that's why the battle of the number 10s thing kind of confused me a little bit, because I really don't see them being the same player. Lukaku, brilliant finisher, but I just don't think he has the same attitude as Kane. Kane is a hard worker, is a hard runner. He'll run lines off the ball that he doesn't need to make, and I'm sure Lukaku would do that in the right team. And I suppose the argument that Lukaku is a better player than Kane is that he's playing in a worse team and still managing to get the goals. But anyone who's watched Harry Kane this season, you can't deny he is from another planet at the minute, and for him to carry on the form that he has in the last few years, more than 20 goals for the third season in a row, I think you can't look past that. You really can't.
I think the Sky Sports hype machine was a bit guilty of sort of trying to make something that wasn't even sort of really there. It was sort of, how it is, every game is the biggest sort of Super Sunday we've ever seen, so they had to make something out of Tottenham Everton. It's not like a classic rivalry, so it was always going to be that Kane versus Lukaku. And I think really the way Lukaku played, had it not been for Vertonghen's slip, he would have not got anything out of the game. He was sort of in Vertonghen's pocket for 80 odd minutes, so whether that was perhaps a bad day or just Tottenham played even better than expected, because let's be honest, like I say, this is a tough Everton team, an informed team that's not lost in 9 games previous, so I think there's no denying the magnitude of Tottenham's win. If we sort of then flip over to Chelsea, no matter how well Tottenham play, you just can't see the 10-point gap being really eroded, can you, Anthony?
No, you can't. I had a feeling before the West Ham game last night that West Ham would get something out of it, but obviously they didn't. And I think that's the win for me. That's the one which is sealed it. I can't see them derailing from here. It's Spurs may or other teams may erode into it. City, if they win their game in hand, are 8 points off. But no, I can't look past Chelsea to win the league. Yeah.
Same for you, James, I would imagine.
Unfortunately so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like last night, West Ham, their best opportunity would have probably been if Andy Carroll was fit, and without him, they didn't quite have enough to sort of put Chelsea to the sword, and Chelsea were always in control, and it's just their blue machine sort of just grinding, not even necessarily grinding out, but just sort of winning games upon games. They've had that, you could say, small blip, but they've drawn 2 from the last 5, but their form has been so good in that first half of the season, they can afford sort of results like that. And even when you look at a draw at Burnley, in comparison to everyone else who's going to Burnley lately and losing, that's a good result, really. So, yeah, for me, you just can't see, with all the will in the world, you just can't see that gap being eroded, really, can you? So, I think it's time to get those blue ribbons on the Premier League trophy.
For me, the result was when Spurs beat them 2-0 was that in January, I think?
That's right.
The game after that, they came out and beat Leicester 3-0. I think that was the key result, because had they lost the next game or not, even got a draw in the following game, then there was a chance of it derailing. But that win, I think, for me, is something that will be looked back on as the key.
So you've heard it here first. Chelsea, Premier League champions. We're paying out on it.
Maybe not first. I think people have been saying it for a little while, but it's probably a dead cert now, yeah.
We're rubber stamping it.
The last time the bookies paid out early, that was on United to win the league, and United didn't win the league, so you never know. If a bookie pays out, that might jinx it for you guys. Possibly.
Right, I need to do the social media bits. That probably brings us to half time. As always, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at @e_footballnet. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/efootballpage. You can go to the website, which is www.efootballonline.com. That'll give you all the latest football news and podcast episodes. Questions for the show is picking up pace. We're getting there. We've got one. So, as always, you can tweet myself at DanTracy1983. Or you can tweet at @e_footballnet. And also, I'll put out a talking point of the weekend, so obviously I can't predict into the future just yet, but come sort of Sunday or Monday, we'll have something up, and once again, we'll get some feedback on the show. Also, if you want to sponsor the show, we could do with a sponsor. We could do with a bit of money, I guess. So ping us a tweet or one of the emails or such, and we'll talk money. Get a sponsor in. Pam's Rolls or something. If you've got a sandwich shop in Braintree, you want to get involved, give us a shout. Second half now, we'll look at the bottom of the table, and the big news must be Craig Shakespeare, and his next act might be staying in charge of Leicester till the end of the season. What do you reckon, Anthony?
I think he's won 2 games. He can't have done much more than that. I think from Leicester's point of view, because there was talk about Mancini or someone coming in. I presume that's not happening. I think now he's won the 2 games. The most sensible thing for Leicester is just to keep him in charge for the time being, and then you'd think they'd stay up now. Wait till the end of the season, review whether Craig Shakespeare's done enough to get the job, or there'll be other managers available, and that I think it's probably a sensible decision for me.
James, do you reckon it's somewhat of a marriage of convenience? I know he's got the 2 wins in his first 2 games, but is it a case of they probably can't get anyone else, and the targets they may have in mind are probably thinking they don't want to necessarily take the job until Leicester's top flight status is confirmed? Do you think that's a fair statement to make?
Yeah, I don't think there's any managers that necessarily really want the job. They see it as a bit of a poison chalice, Trying to save Leicester now might be a little bit of a task that's too far for them. Plus, I don't think they've got the personnel who are attractive enough to bring someone, a big name in a Mancini, like you say. They won the league last year, but they kind of proved this season that it was a massive fluke. Some of the performances they've put in this season have been the performances that you expect from players such as Robert Huth and Wes Morgan, and that just shows that last season was a bit of a hype, and they just hit a vein of form that never seemed to go away. And so, I think that's why a lot of managers might turn this job down. And I think Shakespeare obviously done something to the dressing room that's got them picked up, but I also think any bloke who'd gone into that dressing room after Ranieri left, I think they would have had the same effect. They clearly just wanted Ranieri out, and a fresh face with a fresh impetus would result in the same thing, in the same mentality change, the same, just a bit of a revival of the players. But, Shakespeare clearly knows the players very well. He clearly knows what he's doing. And with no one else really top of the list, I say, why not? Why not give the guy the job?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously he's got off to the flying start. Whether this is the new manager bounce that we always hear about, we'll have to wait and see. But big 6-pointer win on Saturday. We're at that point of the season where 6 pointers are coming along. So for a win for Leicester, Anthony, do you reckon that's a massive dent in Hull's hopes of staying up? Because now the sort of just everything's sort of starting to pull away now. You're looking at 4 points for safety for them. Is that a game they should have really won, or?
I think Leicester were. It was just one of them games. New manager comes in, Leicester were going to win. I think from Hull's point of view, Hull themselves, I think, have really improved. I think Marco Silva's. It was a bit of questions when he took over, but he's proven himself to be a very good manager. I think they signed some good players in January. I think Hull of the bottom 3. I think they're the side most likely to be able to get out of trouble. It's a shame they've lost the game, but I think they could get out of it.
Which brings me on to my next question, because myself and James started our Who Will Go Down questionnaire last week. We've answered it already. I've gone for Bournemouth, Sunderland and Middlesbrough. James went for Bournemouth, Hull, Middlesbrough. So Anthony, I'm going to add you to the list. I know there's 11 games to go, but as of this moment, who do you reckon will be relegated?
Sunderland, Middlesbrough are certainly gone. It's difficult after that. Bournemouth are in atrocious form. I'll say, despite winning the last 2 games, I'll say Palace to go down with Holland, Sunderland, with Middlesbrough, Sunderland. Sorry.
So just to confirm that, it's Crystal Palace, Sunderland, and Middlesbrough. So you don't think Big Sam will do the job to keep them up?
I don't think he will this time. No, I'll say that it is very difficult to pick that third team, though. You know, everyone's I've just agreed with you, Middlesbrough, Sunderland, but that third team is extremely difficult to call.
Because myself and James, we were sort of lambasting Bournemouth last week. Do you think that point, perhaps James, has just stopped the rot and they can finally use that to get a bit of traction in their season after sort of bringing a run of 4 defeats to an end?
Yeah, I think they've got the kind of the team ethos, the togetherness, and I think Eddie Howe is a brilliant manager, and so I think they've probably just got it in them to stay up. And for me, the problem at Hull is the players, is their personnel. I don't see that out and out goal scorer for them. I don't rate Abel Hernandez at all, and I don't see, you know, they lost Robert Snodgrass. They've lost an awful lot of creativity, and I just don't see them scraping out of this one, I'm afraid.
Anthony, we were talking at length about Middlesbrough as well last week, and the fact their lack of goals. If they were to extend this ratio of goals in their first 27 league games, they'll probably get 27 or 28 league goals. Now, do you think, like us, that's not only relegation form, but probably one of the worst Premier League teams that you'll ever see?
Well, I'm from Derby, so...
oh, yes, you've got the... Wow, yeah, that Premier League team.
So I think I can answer that, well, whether it's the worst Premier League question, I would say not. But yeah, on a serious note, their goal scoring form, it's atrocious. I mean, you know, Alvaro Negredo, I know he didn't quite do it at City, but he's a good striker, and he scored 6, and I don't know who else has scored goals for them this season. I mean, it's their recent goal scoring form as well. Like, they've got, I looked it up before the show. They've got 2 goals in the last 8 games. So
shocking, isn't it?
That's a shocking record. Well, yeah, I don't know how else I can say it. They need to score more goals. I'm not sure how, but. And that's the thing, they've got a decent striker up front, so you'd assume if they can get crosses and balls into him, he'll score the goals. But
well, when you mentioned the fact he's got 6 goals and Middlesbrough got 19, so Negredo has got just under 33% of Middlesbrough's goals in the league this season, which is, it sounds a lot, but when you put it like that, 6 out of 19, that's a terrible stat. And this is someone who's earning reportedly $100,000 a week. Now, not bad work if you can get it, is it, guys?
But then, I think you could compare that record to the top teams, though, because I mean, I don't know how many goals Kane's got. He's got about 18 goals or something. He's scored just over a third of Spurs' goals. Diego Costa for Chelsea's probably not got a third of Chelsea's 57 goals. I think that's if you want to put it that way, I think he's done his share. I'd blame it more on the service than him personally.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair point. I think it's just I'm more startled by the sheer aversion to goals that Middlesbrough have got this season. It's just phenomenal, really, how a team can, because they're not that bad at the back, but they seem to be losing 1-0 or 2. You know, just their tight defeats or 0-0 draws, and no one's really been talking about them yet. But now they're sort of 18th. I think the switch has sort of flipped, and everyone thought, well, hang on, I think this is it now. Like, you just can't really see them getting out of that mess, can you? No,
it's been a while since we last saw them win, isn't it? It's the form as well as the goals. You know, I genuinely I couldn't tell you when they last won a game. At least with the other sides down there. I mean, Palace, Swansea, Leicester are just above the relegation zone. They've all won games recently. Hull have won a few recently. They beat Liverpool and they beat Bournemouth. Even Sunderland, they got that win against Crystal Palace. I think the only team in comparable form is Bournemouth. They need to pick up that win, but I just don't see it.
I think Middlesbrough's last win was against Swansea in December in the Bob Bradley era. But I think it was 3-0 or something. So I mean, that was when they beat a really bad Swansea team, and Swansea obviously are better for it now. But yeah, the plight is not looking good for Aitor Karanka's men. Which brings us on to Spanish football. Nice little segue there. Barcelona. Where else do we start but there? Luis Enrique, he's tired, he's burnt out by the whole drama that comes with being a manager of the Catalan Giants. It's happened to Guardiola, who sort of also got burnt out. It seems that a 3-year cycle can only be the sort of a workable period when in charge at the new camp. James, will Barcelona be looking to the Premier League for their next manager? And if they do, who do you reckon it would be?
I can't say that they will definitely be looking at the Premier League, to be honest. I think, obviously, the two that have been mentioned from the Premier League have been Mauricio Pochettino and Ronald Koeman. And out of the two, I think, obviously, Pochettino is definitely the better manager. He's famously a man manager. He's brought some absolutely fantastic players through at Spurs. And Koeman is a great manager too, but I can't see it being Pochettino because of the guy's history. You know, he's a legend at Espanyol, which is a big rival of Barcelona, and so I can't see them employing Pochettino. I think it would be an unpopular choice. Plus, Daniel Levy would not let Pochettino go cheaply, and I don't think, although Barcelona aren't short of funds, I don't think spending money on a manager is the kind of thing that they'd be looking to do. Koeman is different. He's obviously a Barcelona legend. Yeah, he's in a fairly unstable job at Everton. He's only been there a year, and so I suppose that would be weighing on his mind whether he wants to move away so soon after joining from Southampton. And so it's whether they'd just be able to claw him away. I don't think money would be an option for Koeman. I think he personally would probably snap at it if he was given the opportunity. I realised he deflected the question fairly swiftly when he was asked it before the Spurs game. But I think for a man like him in that Everton job, you know, it's not the most inspiring job. I think he'd probably jump at the chance to go and manage Barcelona. But in my opinion, I think they're going to be looking to Spain for their next manager. I think someone over there who knows that game, and although Pochettino knows it very well from his time at Espanyol, I can't see them bringing him in because of those like historical reasons and because of the price tag.
Yeah, that's two good points you make there. I think the lack of Barcelona DNA in inverted commas and the fact that the sort of money it would take to buy Pochettino would almost be like buying a new player in the summer. So I don't think Barcelona are going to be sort of willing to flash the cash in that department. Here's a left field curveball for you, Anthony. If Arsene Wenger didn't sign a new contract at Arsenal, could you see him in the Barcelona hot seat next season?
I was going to raise this before you asked the question, actually. Yeah, I saw he's quite high up in the betting odds. So obviously a few people think that. I don't know. I don't think Barcelona would hire him, but I don't think he'd be a bad fit. I think he likes to play this attacking football. I think his style of play would suit Barcelona very well. But no, for me, I don't think Barcelona would pick him. I think they'd pick someone else, such as Pochettino, Koeman, or someone who's doing well in La Liga. Interesting.
We'll have to wait and see, I guess. Do you think Wenger will be staying on past the end of the season at Arsenal?
It depends. I think it depends who they can get in. There's been talk about a few managers. Allegri's been one. I know he got asked some questions which he deflected as well at the weekend. It depends if Arsenal can get a Simeone or an Allegri or someone like that. Then yeah, this should be the end. But I don't know. I saw the fans are protesting against him. A few are anyway. For me, I think they should try and get a big top manager in at the end of the season for me and say bye-bye to Wenger. Thanks for everything, but bye.
James, if they were to get Diego Simeone in, would that undertake a massive rebuilding project? Because the kind of players that are on Arsenal's books aren't necessarily the kind of players that Simeone is sort of used to dealing with, or they're not quite the same kind of style. Is that perhaps Arsenal fans who are demanding Wenger out? Is the grass necessarily going to be green on the other side?
Yeah, I think Arsenal fans are notoriously fickle. When things are going well with Wenger, he's the best thing since sliced bread. But then if something goes wrong, they're immediately jumping on the manager. I think they've got to look at the players. They've got to look at how they're performing, and it's really not good enough. And I think they're idolising these players who really haven't got the attitude. We saw Alexis Sanchez on his hands and knees against Bayern Munich when they conceded that fifth goal, and I think if we saw one of our players being like that, I'd be disgusted, and I'd turn on him rather than turn on the manager. And now you're seeing bust-ups in training. Mesut Ozil's gone completely missing. And these are the players that you need to be looking up to be able to call upon when they're going through tough times like this. And I think they're the kind of players that you really just can't. As you say, with Simeone, I think he'd certainly be the personality that they need. the personality, he'd be able to bring in his kind of players. I'm sure there'd be a fair few following from Atletico, maybe not the ones they want. I don't think Griezmann would be tempted by Arsenal, but you know, I think he'd certainly change it up, and he'd change up the style of football, and it's been, you know, boring Arsenal for a good few years now. They've been trying that brand of football that works so well to start with, but you know, Arsenal try and walk the ball in syndrome. But yeah, I think maybe it probably is time for a change. I'm personally very happy with the way things are going at the minute. If Arsene Wenger wants to stay for another few years, then he definitely can. But
well, it was like Gary Neville had a go, didn't he, at that fan who had the Wenger out banner during a game, and he I think it is. It's quite, I don't like the malicious, the malicious intent of some of the Arsenal fans. I completely agree with you.
Well, this has been recorded on Tuesday night, and the comeback is on because Arsenal are 1-0 up against Bayern Munich. And is this just a case of, once again, Arsenal putting out a performance when the pressure's off? Is this, again, alluding to all that frustration that Arsenal fans must go through? What do you think, Anthony?
I think so, yeah. Didn't they win they've won a few games, haven't they, big games against big sides in the Champions League when the pressure's been off, or like a last group game where it doesn't really matter. But yeah, they do. They seem to play with a lot more freedom when there's no pressure on them to perform. Yeah, definitely.
But I guess you must sort of then say, why do they keep getting themselves in these positions in the first place? It's just, you know, it must be incredibly frustrating. But that's going to be an episode for another week, because that could go on forever. If Wenger does leave, that's going to be a 2-hour special. You've heard it here first.
Of me celebrating the whole time.
I'm saying nothing. But what I do need to say is that's going to wrap up the show for this week. I need to give a quick shout out to the African football experts, and then I need to thank my guests, Anthony Kendrick. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Cheers for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. James, as always, thanks.
As always, mate, thanks very much for having me.
And that wraps up this week. I hope you'll join me next week. Don't forget to get your listeners' questions in. So that's at Dan Tracy 1983 and at E_footballnet. So until next week, I'm Dan Tracy, and this is the E Football Podcast. Good night.